KISW.
All right, well, our next guest made me look like Swiss cheese at last year's celebrity hockey tournament. But then again, when you give up 10 goals in 2 periods, who didn't? Please welcome to the show from Q13 to Bill Wixey.
Bill Wixey was recently diagnosed with cancer. And, Bill, I guess for people that don't know, you can quickly take them through of just, what's been going on for the past month and a half for you.
Yeah, okay, so basically in February, I started noticing that I had these enlarged lymph nodes, like up in this area here. You can see I got a pretty good-sized scar there now where they had to do this excision biopsy there. So basically, I felt the lymph nodes. That's what it was. A lot of times with Hodgkin's lymphoma, people notice the symptoms first. In this case, it was just the lymph nodes up here by my neck and my sternum, right? And it just didn't feel right. Didn't seem right. So I talked to a buddy of mine. And I said, hey, who happened to be a doctor, and he said, you want to get to an ENT, you want to get this test done, you want to ask these types of questions, which was great for me to have that sort of a resource, and that's how we were able to diagnose it pretty quick. But it was a hairy time because I went into the ENT and he looked at it and he was suspicious, and then we had a needle aspiration where they shoot a needle in there and try to figure out if it's
into
cancer.
The lymph node.
Yeah, and it came back negative. So I was thinking, cool, I'm in the clear, right? And then
so the beginning. So when you get that done, that usually you figure, okay, that's it, we're set,
right?
Oh God! And then obviously,
I went on with my life and everything was good, and then they just kept getting bigger. So I was like, okay, what up? So I go back in, and then they ripped him out. And then once they ripped him out, he sat me down in his office. I mean, and it's the worst conversation you can ever even imagine. You sit there in the doctor's office, and he looks you in the eye, and he says, you have cancer. We don't know what kind it is yet.
Man.
We don't know how far it's spread, but you got some cancer, so you need to be, mindful of this and prepared for what could be coming down the pike here. So that was about 3 days, the longest 3 days of my life, if you can imagine, just kind of like, wow, what could this be? Googling everything I possibly could.
So 3 days before you knew the kind of cancer you had.
I knew that it was probably lymphoma, so I was checking out all 46 kinds of lymphoma, trying to figure out what it could be and what symptoms were consistent with what I had. And it was pretty nightmarish, and a lot of weird stuff goes through your head when you start thinking like that.
Now, here's the bad thing about doing something like that, because from what I understand with Hodgkin's lymphoma, it doesn't happen a lot in people. So were the other lymphomas you were looking at the ones you probably figured you had just for percentages?
Well, that's true, because Hodgkin's lymphoma, I mean, it's, truly, there have been so many advances that's probably the best case. If you're going to get cancer, that's not a bad one to get. That's what I ended up getting. But I'm looking at all these different kinds of lymphoma and thinking, well, Hodgkin's is much more consistent in younger people and older people, and I'm kind of in the middle, so it didn't really work for me. So I'm like, well, boy, maybe that's not it. It could be one of these non-Hodgkin's ones, and some of them can be kind of nasty to deal with. So, yeah, it was a dicey time. When I got the word that it was Hodgkin's, it was like, I was ready to celebrate, actually, at that point, because I knew that I had a pretty good chance. If we caught it early, I had a 90% chance of nailing this thing down.
You ever think
is good.
You ever think you'd be saying you were willing to celebrate having cancer?
I know.
But it's just crazy, but I get it. Like
but that's the perspective switch on you. You're thinking, man, I could have cancer, and then you get the diagnosis that it's something you can kind of deal with, and you're like, yeah, this is great, Yeah. I mean, it's just it sounds so screwy, but that's
BJ, I think you'd get a kick out of this. Bill and I were talking during the commercials, and actually, the reason why he got into broadcasting is because of this very radio station. It's a great story.
Really,
I have been an avid listener of The Rock for 35 years.
I had no idea.
Oh yeah, and so when I was about 12, I did some Explorer Scout thing for kids that may be interested in broadcasting, and they took us over to KISW, and it was at night one night, and Slayton was on the air. Can I say that out loud?
Oh yeah, sure, man.
Anyway,
yeah, definitely. We've had a lot of legiondary guys on this station.
You bet.
We really have.
So this was a long time ago. Obviously, about 12 or 13. So we wander in, and he lets us in the studio, and he was doing a stop set, and I was just like, wow, how cool is this? And he kind of showed us how he did it, and we're inside the studio, and it was like, wow. And that just totally turned a light on for me and made me want to be a broadcaster right then.
Oh, that is very cool.
So I went after it, and I did it, and I actually called him. He was working at another station at that point, and I called him when I was going off to do my internship, and I told him that story. I don't think he believed me, but that's the truth. That's how it started.
And that's boy, I have a similar story growing up in Boston. The same deal, and that's fantastic when you get to do the career that you were inspired by when you walked in the joint. Started. That's really, really cool.
The BJ Shea Morning Experience on 99.9 KISW.